Hello everyone, David here. Today I wanted to make a video on the number one plugin that has been making the biggest difference in the overall sound of my mixes. I use this on practically all of my tracks that I create. It goes on the master bus. I use it in the mastering phase part of my mixing, and this plugin is the multiband imager. It can be a quad imager, a multiband imager, and yeah, so basically what is a multiband imager? It's it's kind of like a multiband compressor. It will split your frequency range into 3 or 4 bands, and what it'll do is it'll control the image of the sound for that frequency. It'll control how wide it is and also how the depth of the sound. So why don't we just jump right in so I can better explain what I'm talking about here. So the one that I use here is it just comes stock in Cubase. It is the Quadra Fuzz. Actually, this is a multiband saturator. It has tube tape distortion saturation, but I use it for as an imager. The reason I do this is to kind of to clear up my mixes to get a better sounding mix. And I should say before we go on that if you're listening to this on any kind of mono sound sources, like if you're listening to this on your phone, you won't be able to hear what I'm doing, because this is strictly for working in stereo. So make sure you have a pair of at least speaker or headphones or something like that to be able to hear and know what I'm doing here. So I'll reset my settings that I have here, and as you can see here, you have your frequency spectrum up here, and right now it's split at 150, 1.5 kilohertz, and 10 kilohertz. So I have all my sub frequencies at 150 and under, and then I have in the mid 150 to 1.5, and then 1.5 to 10 and above you have your high frequencies. And what I use it for is to really what I like to use it for is for the sub frequencies. I like to make it all mono, and the just above the sub frequency, so 150 to 1.5 kilohertz, I use to have it still not completely mono, but still kind of lower the width, so it's still not as wide, so it doesn't come out so much as out of the left and right speaker, but it's still more mono. And then as you go up and up higher to the higher frequencies, that's when I start to pan and make the sounds a bit wider. So anyways, before we start playing around with the settings, why don't we just hear, I have this track here that I've written, and I'll just play a section of it. I won't play the whole thing because it's over 2 minutes long, and just so we can have an idea of what we're working with here. Okay, so that's the track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the Quadra Fuzz here, take off the imager. Let's just listen to it really quickly, just without anything on, and then we'll play around with it. Okay, so you listen to that. It doesn't sound too bad. But let's start tweaking some things here. So because this is not a designated imager, I don't have control over as many of the parameters as you could have. For example, I know like IK Multimedia has a quad imager that really that specifically focuses on being an imager, but for purposes, this actually works just fine for me. So let's turn it on here, and the first move I make is always in the sub frequency, so from 0 to 150 hertz. And what I do is I make it completely mono. I get rid of all that low rumble, that low boominess and woof, and I put it completely mono. And this is a very general rule and guideline that most people follow. It helps to really clear up the mixes. So that's the first thing I do. So I'll turn it off, and then I'll A/B it so we can hear what this sounds like. So if you can hear, that really opens up the mix. That's what I love about this. It really brings out the rest of the frequencies. You can suddenly hear the drums pop out a little more, the guitars are a little brighter, a little bit more forward, and that's just with one simple move. Like I just made it completely mono, and suddenly the mix is a bit more alive. Yeah, so the low frequencies are suddenly, they're not covering the rest of the instruments in the side, like in the left and right speaker. So that's why you're hearing a lot more clarity in there. So anyways, that's the first move I like to do. Let's move on to the second move, which is basically do something similar. What I'll do is you'll see me go full width, so 200%, and then I'll start pulling it back until I find it hits the spot that's pretty comfortable and sounds good. So excuse me, let's work with that. There you go. So this time I brought it down to about 68%. I thought that was a good, comfortable place. Now let's move up to the next one. So for 1.5 and above, I usually don't tweak it too much. Sometimes I'll just leave it as is. But for our purposes, why don't we just play around with it so we can hear what it sounds like and what it can do. So what you can hear, or what you should be able to hear when I'm playing around with this, is that you can suddenly hear the pop of the snare, and you can suddenly start to hear the hi-hats a little. They kind of pop out a bit more out of the texture. So I think 137 might be a bit much to my liking. I might pull it down a bit. Actually, that's not too bad. Let's do the same thing with the higher frequencies from 10 to 20. Yeah, that one I don't want to play too much with it. You can barely hear it anyways, and I don't want to make it sound too harsh, so we can leave it like that. And that's basically how I use it. That's how I use a multiband imager. And yeah, as you can see, I find it makes a big difference right away. It's not even something you have to think too hard about. It's a pretty quick move, especially for the sub frequencies. You just know it's going to go straight to mono. And yeah, that's how I do this. And let me know what you guys think. If you guys use this, I hope you guys will give it a try. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see any other kind of videos. And I'll see you guys in the next one.